Now, did any of your yard work include flower beds or anything?
Was it more, you mean, was it...
I have to take them because let's see what they say. Where is it?
Call from Delta CA.
Oh, no.
If I close this window, can I close this screen?
No. That's no. Over here.
This one.
Oh, over here. The string. No, that's June. I don't feel like talking to her right now.
That's fair.
High anxiety whenever you're near. High anxiety, it's you that I fear.
Welcome to the first ever Grandma-Grandson podcast.
This is my grandma,
And this is my grandson.
where we grapple with...
The biggest problems of life, the universe, and everything. The things that affect us all and things that affect us both.
and the small things that don't matter in the slightest.
We do it all with 70 years between us,
And a bowl of very fresh cannabis.
but from just down the street.
Welcome to
High anxiety. I thought that was real good.
It's very clear to me I've got to give in. High anxiety, you win.
You're saying like flower. Was there anything more? You mean like creative, kind of
No,
delicate?
yeah, something more. Because I was thinking yard work. I mean, two guys, a family that worked for us over in Del Mar. Just a lovely Mexican family. Did our yard, and they were such nice people and such generous people and so intelligent, you know. I really appreciated them both. They were husband and wife, and now the son has taken over the business. Mm-hmm. And the son got educated, you know. I mean, he's taken over the business. And it's not that big. Now he does Eleanor instead of me. I was going to say, I guess I wouldn't care for the exercise of yard work myself, but anything that has to do with growing things, like running a greenhouse, and that's digging, you know, and growing flowers. Oh, I would like to take you to maybe one afternoon. I don't know how long you're staying, you know. You could go to the orchid greenhouse up in Del Mar, just so gorgeous. And I'm thinking, why the hell couldn't you do something like that? I mean, it certainly doesn't leave any room for people to look down on you own a flower garden.
No, and certainly if they do, I mean, that's not what I'm worried about, especially if people look down on you for doing anything, to be honest. Mm-hmm. That doesn't bother me. I mean, mm-hmm. It's all me. It's all mm-hmm. coming from me going,
but
well...
would that make you feel... I mean, there are people like that who have people working in the greenhouses and so forth and so forth. They have time to read stuff they never had time to read when they were studying, you know, and plenty of time to go surfing and plenty of time to do other things.
Well, that's just it. I mean, it seems great. So why is it that...
Why couldn't you even think in that direction?
Right. Right. And then we talk about regrets, and we talk about how old you get, and you go, wow, this is this thing it's just so tangible what it is you're making and what you're working on. And wow,
Do you like that idea or not? I mean,
there are a lot of things you could probably say that followed that sort of pattern that I would go, yeah, why not that?
But you don't think so?
Well, I sort of do, but at the same time, it hasn't made me go, but I have this opportunity to go to law school, or to go become a teacher, or to try and become a reporter, or to try and write more. I have these opportunities that I've sort of followed and kept the doors open, and to shut them all for something that could have been right all along. It's like this way of accepting. Well, it feels like I'm It feels like I'm. It feels like I'm. What do you call it when you're like, you accept your losses? You know, you. It's like you
consolidate your gains.
And what do you do with losses? Like if a stock drops and immediately you sell it, well, you just lost that. You did lose it. You accepted and so doing that with things that you've kind of worked sort of towards, or worked to keep as options, to just say no, never mind. It feels like you're. It feels sort of worse than wasting
the way
time.
You do it, the way you work it out. There isn't a good choice, you know?
No.
You know,
there's no good. So you say you have these regrets. I have the regrets looking forward at me looking back at now.
Yes.
And I go, well, I'm gonna regret it. And that's even worse, knowing you're about to make a terrible choice.
Yeah, but just think, this is what?
Maybe it's not a terrible.
Well, supposing that you love the idea of becoming a gardener of some sort, like, as I say, greenhouse, but, you know, it could be an not orchidist, that's an orchid, but an orchardist.
An orchardist.
Growing orchids.
Orchards. And orchids.
Yeah.
They're quite different.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not.
Yeah, all right. Oranges, grapefruits.
Okay. An orchard. You mean mostly orchard.
All right. Okay. Now, I'm not suggesting this. I'm supposing something. That's different.
Okay.
Than urging you to do something. I'm just trying to show you you're really not blocked in.
No, I don't take any.
Not urging.
I don't feel any pressure from this.
All right. So supposing you had that, and you're thinking of this, and so now you're thinking of it, and you think, well, it's now April. Schools begin in September usually. That's 6 months away, 5 months away.
Right.
Could I get some sort of job on in an orchard or a greenhouse now,
but
and I'd see how I like this atmosphere and what they're doing and so forth, and that sort of thing. And if I liked it, I'm just giving you this as an example. It could be nothing like an orchard, but because you said you like I mean, I know you don't want a job raking lawns the rest of your life. So.
Well, there is something about that the real physical.
Well, nothing to
strain
help,
which makes you feel...
nothing to keep you from doing your own lawn. Which is usually, if you live out here.
Well, it's not. But it's not. There's a different relation you have to the thing when you're just doing it, you know, as a chore for yourself, and when you're doing it.
Well, I'm not recommending the raking of lawn. I have somehow feeling that wouldn't lead somewhere. But let's, as a moment, take my garden idea. Okay, gardener. And not even that. You know, I mean, sometimes some of them raise a special kind of plant. say a particular kind of orchid and become specialists in it and that sort of thing.
I-
Okay, now listen. So then this person gets a job in the summer in such a place and sees whether or not he likes the end result of it, or not. And if he does, if he thinks he does, he doesn't necessarily enroll in a college. He needs to know more about the thing. So he goes to either a night school or enrolls, I don't know, gets courses. I took courses in Columbia without being matriculated. I mean, I was enrolled in the class. And in horticulture, and does a lot of reading on horticulture, and then gets an expert as an assistant, and then his family helps him buy a beginning orchid house or whatever, and he goes to work that way. Boy, I think I'd like that job myself. I just made up.
Do you regret that now?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, isn't that creative? I mean, every time they bring an orchid in here, and Beatrice, she takes our dead orchids out. I really feel she doesn't look at them all for a couple of months, and then she looks at them, and then there are a couple of buds on them. She brings them in, and I feel she's created them because they're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to be, clipped down and put down in a cool place and stuff like that for a while and then come back. But she just has this magic way of timing it, is all I can tell you. And she feels so terrific about it, too. She just doesn't tell me they're coming. She just puts it out one day and waits for me to notice it.
It might be that it might not be so sustainable if you actually make that the thing that
where your money comes from.
Well, yeah, when you put all these other necessary things, eating and living.
No, I'm sure I'm sure it pays because they're.
Well, if you do it really well, but it's not the same as just doing it and saying I'm going to do it.
You probably would buy take over an existing operation.
This is a pretty elaborate plan that you've got going on.
Right. Of course it is.
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, so anyhow, I just wish, I don't know if we're still recording.
Yes,
but
it doesn't stop.
Do you mind that all this is on?
I don't mind. What
probably take it off.
Yeah. What I'm interested in getting at is this idea that we have these regrets. Like now, you think about, okay, here are these things that I didn't do, and I think about the things that I will have not done.
Will have not done. See,
it's unavoidable. There will be these things, and I remember being a little kid and sitting at the foot of my parents' bed, watching TV illicitly and watching comedians, and you would watch these comedians, and I would go, well, maybe someday randomly that I'll just get to do that. I didn't even think I'll be a comedian. I didn't think I want to do that for my life. I thought, maybe I'll get to do what they're doing right now on stage. Maybe I'll get to talk like that. And I didn't do anything that would make that possible. But as a 9-year-old or a 15-year-old or somebody about to go to college, you can think, hey, I haven't missed the boat. A lot of those guys may have been exactly where I am now. But then I continued to do nothing like that. This is just one example of a thing. But I continued to do nothing on that path. And then you get to be 25, say, and you go, that thing, or med school, or whatever. They're not going to happen. And a lot of it is fine. And some things when you've passed the point where you would have gone through that door, or you've gone too far and the door is closed, that's the only time when you realize, like, oh shit, I actually.
You think it's too late to become a comedian?
Well, that's just one example, but in a way, yes, because the pressure that's put on that now, especially after working towards other things and trying to keep other doors open, the pressure that's put on it now is one that says, are you willing to choose this at the expense of everything else?
Well, when you chose your course of study at Columbia, what did you have in mind?
Well, actually, will you ask these things without using specifics, like where don't mention specifics about
Just an apology from here in the future. I do not know why I was being like this.
I want it to be more general.
Here.
Yeah,
Dude, why? Not sure if I was trying to hide or to connect. I know she would call for us to be more grounded. I didn't know I asked to be less so. No one really wants to live in the clouds. So, friends, feel free to call me on this at any time. Be the grandmas you want to see in the world.
When you were in college, what did you have in mind that your course of study would lead to?
that's just it. I had no idea. I had no idea coming out of college.
You didn't choose your courses with an idea of them leading anywhere.
No, I mean, that was crazy. I didn't know coming out of high school what I wanted to study. I had sort of the same ideas that I do now, which was, I like studying languages.
You're not talking loud enough, I don't think.
I like studying languages. I liked, being able to connect with people. I liked some politics, but in a much kind of larger way. I liked music. I liked really weird things. I liked anthropology. I didn't know what I liked.
That.
I liked
like
psychology, right?
Anthropology.
Sure, because it's all about sort of people, but it wasn't very specific. And so when I went into college, I didn't know. And when I signed up for classes, freshman year, I didn't know. I started taking Arabic because it sounded cool. And when I thought about the idea of taking it, that clicked, but I didn't know why I was doing it. And at the end of that year, my roommate was studying politics very adamantly, and he said, "Hey, you should do this."
Hey, what?
Hey, you should do this. He said, he's studying
politics.
He's studying political science. So he said, "Hey, you should study political science."
Uh-huh.
And the idea was, well, it's general, but not too general. It leaves doors open, but it's not wishy-washy. And it also is things that you're inherently interested in. Now, I'm also interested in all these other things, but at that point, you did have to pick. And so I did that. It was all these choices were to keep as many doors open as possible, always.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I came out of school, it was like, what do I have? Well, I have this sort of vague political understanding, which really isn't any more than, a bunch of other people that would have taken completely different things. And I have this, I know a little Arabic, and I know some other things that I've done. And so let me follow that into something else. And that also wasn't clear. I was like, but I still want to do all of these things, the same things I think about now and more. And
well, the same things you want to do now. What do you want to do now? Put a name on it.
It's all about making good on the things that you've done before. This was in high school, what was I interested in? Music and languages and communication and that kind of stuff. And I would go to college and kind of do things that built on that and maybe do some different things. But I'm also trying to keep everything else alive. So that closes the doors from trying things that are really new, and then...
Would you like to be a trumpeter in an orchestra?
At a particular point, I said, well, okay, maybe, but I closed the door. I did close that. That's one of the few things I closed the door to. And I think that's why I never really practiced, because I didn't practice because I there's this feeling that if you, I didn't want to have that feeling like I was putting all this energy into something that had a limit. You know, and if I tried harder at this than anything else, and if I really practiced and put all this time in, but at some point I was going to say, well, this is just a hobby. Then it was going to feel like, well, why don't I put that energy in something that doesn't have a limit, that'll keep going, that might be my everything, you know? I think I didn't practice so that I'd be too bad to actually
All
follow
right,
it
so
through.
then now, all right, the music. Well, I mean, is that irrecoverable? If you put a year into heavy study of the trumpet?
Yeah, absolutely. People go to conservatories for that from when they're 16. You know?
Yeah, but you had training.
Yeah, not like that. And I wasn't that good. This is not a thing I want to keep open.
Yeah. Okay. So now, what are the other things that you would have done? Sweeping trash, and raking lawns, that is, and
I think I would have done more things that were in line with entertainment as total hobbies. And
say that again. Entertainment.
I would have done more kind of entertainment related things, performance as hobbies that didn't have this pressure on them, especially when you're in middle school or high school.
Did they have such things? I mean, that you can. I mean, you'd be hobbying to yourself, or did they
Acting
have
or doing comedy or being in plays and making movies and that kind of stuff.
plays.
I would have done that more, but I kept saying, well, look, I'm playing music and I'm doing these other things. There's enough like embarrassment in my life and pressure and time spent for things. I didn't feel lazy, and so I let myself off the hook and said I don't need to try these things. And partly those just because those were the things I'd always done, so I kept doing the things I'd always done.
Well, did you talk the stuff out with your parents when you made the decisions not to go ahead in any one area, or did it never come to anything that clear?
I've sort of never really I've hardly made any decisions to not go ahead with a thing. It's always to continue on with
All right, well,
all the
so
things that
now
you start.
you're in a position where if you continue on, you're going to be in this sort of position always.
Well, that's just it. This is the age where you get to a place where there is no continuing. I mean, after college, there is no fixed, after high school especially, but I think I always knew I was going to go to college, and after college I didn't know. And so you get out of college and you go, okay, there is no default to follow anymore. And as soon as there's no default, you got to make huge choices that everything depends on. You gotta flick that railroad switch and choose your tracks. And maybe those tracks lead to other ones, and people go, you never know, what's gonna come from the thing that you're choosing. But that's true of any path. You do know in what direction you're trying to head, or in what direction you're not trying to head. And I've spent all this time trying to keep all the tracks open still, and that you can't keep doing. At least not if you want to actually make it far along any of them. You could work odd jobs forever and still say, well, if I want to, I could go back to school. If I want to, I could go into the gardening business. If I wanted to, I could go into this industry, but you'll never really be as satisfied doing that as if you just pick it at some point. You've been doing that for a while. That's where I feel like you choose your framework. And if you've been doing it for forever, you might end up somewhere kind of cool in it.
That whole last thought again,
you don't give yourself the option of doing anything at, say, the highest level, and I don't mean professionally the highest level, but like the deepest into it. You don't give yourself that chance unless you commit to it, for a long time, and that means committing to not doing a bunch of other things. And I keep leaving these doors open and open and open, and that
But you know, trying to think. I mean, I hate to bring it back to me, but that's what this is about, isn't it?
Of course.
Is that I'm thinking, look, what am I now? I mean, if I'd worked harder, I would still be writing, you know. But I lack the energy and
You accomplished a lot. You did a lot. Was there a point where you're writing children's books, and at a certain point you go, I feel good. I don't need to write anymore, and I'll feel okay with that?
my mind never seemed to run that way. I mean, I didn't feel pressured to write, except maybe my last book, which probably was one of my poorer books. I mean, I don't think it was too well worked out. You know, it was all right. It wasn't great. But, I didn't keep up my connections. I think but then I did start writing short stories for grown-ups. And I marketed them, most of them, but and I got nice notes.
At what point, when do you think you chose what your career path? I sort of hate that as the only term, but when do you think you chose that?
When did I choose it?
Yeah.
I'm going to get a real kick out of telling you this, because this is what I was going to really tell you before. When we came out of college, making your money living doing anything was all people with my education, which was just what do you call it? Just a BA. Mm-hmm. It never crossed my mind to do graduate work. Never. I wanted out of school. And
yes, I remember you saying you were not the top student.
I was not ambitious student. And moreover, the war was on, and Herb was going overseas, and I wanted to be married before we went overseas. And so I hurried up, and that's when I took courses at Columbia and made up a half a year that way. And worked with really good short story writers. Her name is Brewster. She was very big on the faculty there, and she I forget what her first name was. Doesn't matter. While the war was still on, as a matter of fact, before Herbert came home, I had left the government, OWI, where I was working in Washington as a secretary or clerk, having been advised by my employers there not to seek work as a file clerk ever.
Why not?
Because I was so terrible at it. Did you see my room? See, I think files go in the wrong direction. They go up and down like this usually.
Uh-huh.
And I think they should be spread out like this.
You're a horizontal filer.
Yeah, horizontal. And so you can see every single thing that's in your file.
Look, you're a revolutionary.
Yeah.
In wartime, they don't have room for more revolutionaries.
So anyhow, that, and when I left the government, I took a job as a copywriter I worked my way into it actually, but we did freelance work for writing copy. But I mean, advertising had never crossed my mind, nor being a writer really. I mean, I never really thought I'd make a living as a writer, you know. I mean, I thought I'd get married and have children, and, you know, what else would you do? So, you know, so what happened was that I was really good at writing advertising and all that, but after I'd done that for quite a few years, Herbert wrote sort of a short pilot, I would say, of a book, which eventually got called Elizabeth the Bird Watcher. Mm-hmm. And he gave it to me, and he said, would you really, you know, really write this? I mean, it isn't written. So I said, sure, I will. And I did. And he took it to Macmillan, and they took it right out of his hand. And he put my name on it as the author. And this is how I got started as a writer. And, I mean, he did just as much, oh, I'm so sorry. He did as much as I did, you know, on that. It was his idea, but never mind. So then they immediately wanted more books like that. They thought they were for a specific kind of child who was higher intelligent but doesn't read well or something like that, you know? Okay. And so then I wrote the other two Elizabeth books. I did those, and we had good illustrators. And then they just kept asking me for books, and I in the end I did 20-some books. Eventually, I turned to novels for teenagers.
What do you think would have happened if you had gone into all of that with this idea that you were going to write books and you were going to write children's books? And
if I'd gone into what?
What do you think would have happened? What do you think would have happened if you'd gone into it with that idea that you wanted to write mm-hmm. books, that you needed to write books? Mm-hmm. Do you think that would have been? Do you think?
I wonder.
Yeah.
Never thought of that.
I mean, you didn't need to do this. You just
didn't need to do it, but I mean, there it was. Just, I think, you know, the very least Herbert could have done is put his name on it. But then, you know, later on, he wrote that charming book himself, and he wrote it himself. The Boy Who Could Walk Into Pictures. You know, don't know if you ever remember that. Are you feeling okay? You feel kind of. It's hot, isn't it?
It's hot, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think we should stop?
Well, hold on. Before I want to get to the end of the thoughts before.
Well, that's so. That's it. So I became a writer, and I did not regret it, and I even now think of getting those short. I still feel. I mean, the short stories are the only things I haven't published, and I would like to, and I. Too lazy to do the work that goes into.
But were there times when you thought, like, what if I'd been doing something else all this time?
What if I'd been answer the question that you asked before?
Were there times when you through all this, you're looking back and you're going, well, what if I had just done something else? What if?
No, that isn't the way in my mind. There wasn't anything really else I would have. I mean, I'd been writing poetry since I was a kid, and I did think of myself as a poet, And actually, when I was in boarding school, I had actually published, so I was 17. I'd published in a couple of anthologies. And so I guess I was basically thought of myself as being some sort of writer.
But you didn't recognize that when you were actually going and starting to become this, going, oh, wow, this is
Well,
actually kind
I
of
realized that I would have to make some money. And even then, I guess I was smart enough to know that writing was, they didn't throw it at you. Although, I mean, the first time Herbert went out, he sold that book.
It's always been hard, but it's harder now.
Uh-huh.
It's always been hard, but it is.
Yeah.
It's different now.
It was easier then, obviously easier then. I mean, he went in, he was able to talk to the editor of Macmillan. For goodness sakes, you couldn't do that today.
Sure.
See? So,
well, they certainly wouldn't.
So, your personal charm and everything.
That won't get you very far.
Well,
I
don't
you
know.
somewhere.
Well, she said, that editor said to me, he's a diamond in the rough, isn't he?
What do you think? What do you think would happen if you had? This is something I think about. Like, what do you think would happen if you had gone? If you took you now and you introduced you to 16, 17, or 25-year-old you, and you said, "Okay, here's you, 94." What do you think that you? Do you think that you would be? Oh, cool. Okay, good.
What would I say?
Do you think? Do you think that version of you
is that what I wanted?
Do you think 24-year-old you would see you, would look at you now and go, that makes sense, or that's cool, or I'm happy about that, or or whatever?
If I would
question.
be satisfied with what I'd done with my life.
I don't know if it's satisfied. Imagine just meeting. Imagine the two of you meeting. Imagine 94 and 25-year-old you meeting. What would they? What would the younger one think of the older?
I would think, well, she must be pretty pleased with some of this stuff. I mean, some of the things that I wrote, I'm still proud of.
Sure.
Some of them are in the short stories that are still unpublished. I think some of them are interesting.
But not about the work, but I mean just about like
myself.
Imagine, well, no, not just a personality thing. Imagine, you know what that person has done and what how their life has been. And would you go, cool, okay, that makes sense for me, that's what I would become, and I would be happy to become that.
I think so. I mean, I never expected to be able to live as well as we do because we started off with absolutely zero, Mm-hmm. And so for one thing, and also Herb, I mean, at 25, I mean, he was in the Army, but right after that, what did he do right after the Army? But he started gag writing while he was in Europe during the war.
Writing for cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
Writing for the cartoons.
So gag writers, hi from 2024. Gag writers wrote the ideas behind cartoons that the more famous illustrators drew. People like Charles Addams of the Addams Family. They weren't necessarily coming up with their own jokes all the time, gags, but they had a style. And so Grandpa Herb, Grandma's Diamond in the Rough, he wrote the jokes for New Yorker cartoonists for something like 40 years.
Yeah.
Which is writing the jokes for no one in particular.
He started with just a couple of cartoonists. And, he wrote to them and sent them a few ideas, and they thought he was good, and so they worked with him.
See, I think one of the tough things now is that we can try as hard as we want to not expect anything, and maybe we don't, but it doesn't mean that we don't hope for the wildest things. We didn't grow up in the same kind of wartime, and
No.
and the same kind of economy, and with the same parents, and with the same newness to this country, and you see everything, especially now. Everything is in your face. Every possibility, every success that's ever been had is right there.
Mm-hmm.
And you see all those things and you go, wow, like.
Do you feel that you want to be, the absolutely top of what you do?
It's
Cool. Well, I'm gonna cut this here. Everything is just a long conversation. This one we sat down for a couple hours. So next week will be the end of it. And I'll just pick up here where I think she asked a really good question, and I do not have a really good answer. Thanks for listening, and it's Guten Tag. Yeah.
Anxiety. And remember, folks, be good to your parents. They've been good to you. You win.
Oh, sweet and lovely lady, be good. Oh, lady, be good to me. I'm just a babe in the wood. Oh, lady, be good to me.